Welcome to New North Greenhouses. We're in Greenhouse B, and this is one of our production greenhouses, and it is a beautiful spring day. Of course, it's a typical northern spring. We've got lots of snow on the ground, unfortunately. It is melting, but everybody's anxious to get going. So I wanted to talk today about vegetable gardening and edible gardening in general, because it's so important these days. People are worried about the price of food, the availability of food, and food security, and if they're growing it themselves, they want to make sure it's grown in a healthy way. And there's a lot of new gardeners out there that have started to garden during the pandemic who would like to continue on and maybe need a bit more information. So first of all, I'm going to talk about starting from seed. And it's important you choose, of course, first of all, things that you like to eat and your family likes to eat. But then you need to think about how you're going to grow things. Are you going to grow into a garden, into the ground, or are you going to grow in a container? For instance, I brought up a few different spinaches here, and one is great for starting indoors and using as spinach sprouts and small young spinach. The other one is an excellent garden spinach, and then this is spinach seed tape, so that if you're a new gardener, you're not sure how to space things or thin, you can just lay the tape out in the garden and pin it down, and the seeds are spaced every so often and they germinate, and you've got an instant garden. So that's sort of one suggestion. You may want to grow flowers around your vegetable garden, so sunflowers are very, very popular. And if you want to grow a bean that gives you a beautiful flower but still an edible bean, the scarlet runner beans are very popular for growing vertically and growing near your garden. If your favorite thing to grow is tomatoes, you have to think a little bit about what your aim for growing tomatoes is. If you're growing from seed, you need to look at, do you want a cherry tomato that you're going to snack on and add to salads? Or do you want a full-size tomato that you're going to slice or maybe can, or maybe both? So you can certainly grow tomatoes in the ground in a warm area, or in a container. Either is fine for tomatoes, but you do have to choose your tomato size, the container size, based on the size of the tomato. So I brought a few tomato plants in as well to show you, since we're on the tomato topic. This one is Better Boy. It's a very old-fashioned variety. This was my mother-in-law's favorite tomato. She was always looking for Better Boy. So a good heritage variety that gives you a medium-sized, really dense fruit. That can be grown in a large container or in the ground. This one is Topsy Tom. This one can be grown in a container or hanging basket. It will tend to grow up and then spill out. So not the best one for planting right into the ground. This one is a cherry tomato, similar to the seed I showed you. So again, it can grow in the ground or in a good-sized container. This one here is it's a little guy at this point, just transplanted. We grow these from seed. This is Sun Sugar, and this is an orange cherry tomato, and it's like picking candy. My granddaughters and I love to pick it right off the vine and eat it. It's very, very tasty. A low acid tomato. This one is Tidy Treats, and this one is suitable for small container growing. So if you're growing on a patio or a deck or a small space where you've got room for a small container, Tidy Treats is a nice, small, sturdy tomato plant with a medium, well, a little bigger than a cherry tomato, but in that range of tomato size. And that's it for the tomato plants I brought in. So you can think that there's lots to decide when you're going to grow tomatoes. But we can certainly help you with that, and there's lots of information on the tags as well. Front and back of the tags give you information. And if you're growing from seed, the back of the package gives you information for growing from seed as well. I also brought up, a lot of people like to grow, other than just spinach for snacking on or for your smoothies or for salads, they like to grow lettuce. And you can certainly grow lettuce very easily in a lettuce bowl. So it can go into a bowl and you can pick it young. You can grow it in, you can see on the front of my table there, I've got a window box. It's really quite advantageous to grow the lettuce and the early spring crop like this in a container that you can move in and out and start early. And when it starts to get hot and these tend to go a little to seed, move them out of the hot afternoon sun and into the shade in the afternoon. And your greens, your lettuces, and any of that kind of cool season crop will last a little longer. So you can also put them right into the ground though. I have a friend down the beach, an Italian gentleman who's been gardening for years and years, and he just makes sure he lets some of his lettuce plants go to seed. He pulls them out of the garden, turns them upside down, and shakes them all around in the garden. And he gets lots coming up, which we call volunteers. Wherever the seed lands, the plant grows. Okay? If you're wanting to grow cucumbers, you have to think about why you want them. Do you want pickling cucumbers? So then you should grow pickling cucumbers and dill as a herb. I don't have dill here with me today, but you should be growing dill. Or do you want an eating cucumber? Okay, so think about, maybe you want both. Do you have space for both? Or are you going to try some big containers for your cucumbers? And then last year the rage was the cucamelon, which is like what they call a gherkin tomato, gherkin cucumber. So it's a little wee guy and a little on the sour side, but quite interesting to grow and very interesting to taste as well. I also brought in this acorn festival. I found this at a farmer's market last year, and it is a wonderful acorn type squash that has quite a thin skin. So you can actually slice it and roast it in the oven and eat the skin at all. And it's a very, very good squash. So we're growing that for you this year too. If you're growing from seed, you need the right medium, of course. So a seeding and sprouting mix is excellent for starting things from seed indoors. And you can also use this soil activator. So you can mix it with water and water in your seedlings once they've germinated to help put some beneficial microbes into the soil to help your plants be nice and strong. Once they're up and growing, or when they're at a stage where you're transplanting, if you're growing in containers, this is an organic container vegetable fertilizer. We also have an organic container vegetable soil. So they go together, the urban fertilizer and the urban soil. So don't forget, in a container, you need to add more nutrients because you're watering more often and the nutrients flush right through the soil. I know at home when I plant anything in a container, I mix 1/3 compost with 2/3 potting soil. The compost adds some body, but it also adds some nutrient. I don't rely on just the compost, I do fertilize as well. Okay? I did want to talk a little bit about peppers as well. You can grow peppers from seed. It's getting a bit late to grow peppers from seed. Generally, they're the first ones started, but you still might be able to do it. Otherwise, we do sell, you can buy pepper plants, and you have to decide, do you want a sweet pepper? Do you want a Carolina Reaper, which will burn your tonsils off? Which really, a lot of hot pepper people really like that one. Or King of the North. So these two are sweet. That's a shepherd pepper. This is more of a traditional bell pepper. So the shepherd is very valued for roasting, and this one, of course, is for stuffing or for eating fresh. Okay. I also brought up an eggplant. So peppers and eggplants are really warm season plants. Tomatoes as well. You're not going to want to put those out when it's cold weather. I know people will take their plants from inside and start to harden them off on warm spring days. Just remember to watch for a cold wind, because just because the thermostat says it's 12 degrees, if we've got a cold northwest wind, it could drop the temperature down and your plants could get damaged by wind chill. Simply as simple as that. Other than starting from seed, you may want to start plants that are well established, and you may want to start some fruit. So I brought some fruit along as well. This one's a blackberry, so you can buy it already growing, and it's just a matter of taking it out of the container, following the directions, and planting it into the ground. Now this is already growing, so you couldn't take this out today. Well, today's a warm day, but tomorrow it's supposed to be rainy, and by the next day snow. So you're not taking anything out that's already growing. If it's in leaf and you've got it already, you're going to have to keep it alive as a growing plant and very slowly acclimatize it to going outside. I brought a strawberry basket. A lot of people look for alternative areas to grow fruits and vegetables, so you can certainly grow strawberries in a basket and harvest them, and they'll produce runners, and then in the fall you can take them out of the basket and plant them into the ground, and you'll get a lot more than 3 strawberry plants by the fall time. And there are other berries other than blackberries and strawberries you can grow. While we're talking about strawberries though, you can buy them as growing plants, but you can also buy a bare root strawberry plant. So we sell them this way. This is called All-Star, so you'll get at least 1 tag with the bunch that you buy. And you're going to want to plant that out into the garden and try to keep it as cool and moist as possible before you get it into the garden. But these are quite hardy. Once the ground is workable, you can get them into the ground. If they've sprouted much, you may have to protect that top a little bit till it acclimatizes to being outside. Other fruit that you may want to grow is raspberries. You need a good patch to grow raspberries. It's not something you can grow in a container. They need room to spread. So we sell them packaged like this or individually bare root, and then later in the season we'll sell them potted. Other vegetables you can grow, of course, potatoes are very popular. There's lots of different kinds of potatoes to grow. Onion sets, you can grow red and yellow onion sets. And then this is asparagus. So this is, again, you're buying it bare root, and this is called a crown. So this is planted in a trench and then slowly filled in as the asparagus grows taller. And this is an investment crop. You're not going to get any asparagus for the first 2 years for sure. You have to let it root in and mature. And as soon as it's as big as your little thumb, you can start to slowly harvest it. But don't harvest too much at once or you'll tire the root out, and then next year you'll get really thin stalks again. I have a row of asparagus at the back of my garden, and that's a perfect place for it. Okay, so growing vegetables, herbs, of course. I brought a variety of herbs in here. We've got basil and Thai basil, which is a very popular form of basil. We've got sage. This one's really pretty even for putting in a container because it's a tricolor sage. This one is a lemon thyme, again a very pretty one, and the traditional rosemary. So you can certainly plant herbs into the ground or into a container. One thing I do find with basil, because it hates the cold, that I grow mine in a container and I don't put it out too early. And if we get an early frost or a late frost in the spring or an early frost in the fall, I pull my basil pot in under cover because basil just hates the cold. It'll go black. Very unattractive, and it does not taste very good when it's black. So that gives you a little overview of growing fruits and vegetables. I covered a lot of information, but there's lots of information available online from seed catalogs, from the tags and packages, and from staff at a garden center, and we can certainly help you be successful. I always say on a new venture, starts on a small scale that you can manage, and then each year add on until you get to the dream garden that you've always wanted. Gardening is trial and error, and we all learn new things every year. Thanks very much.